say something.
Where's my notes?
All right. All right. Well, hit the first slide. All right. So during this time period, this is around about the mid 19th century or so, the Industrial Revolution was in full swing, right, and it had been for some time. Now, this is crucial because it's what my key concept is all about. Not so much the Industrial Revolution itself, but kind of like the impact that it had on society and life during this time, and then like what changes were made in response to the impact that it had. Hit my next slide for me, Paul. All right, so first I'm gonna give you some background before I delve into it. We're gonna talk about working conditions. So with the onset of the Industrial Revolution, we start to see really low wages being paid to the workers or whatever. We see terrible working conditions, and then we see high unemployment as well in the first phase of the revolution. All right, so to elaborate, most laborers usually work 10 to 15 hours a day, 6 days a week with no paid vacation or holidays, nothing like that. And they worked under very dangerous and hazardous conditions, depending upon what kind of work they were doing. Next slide for me. All right, so what's that? Okay, the kids, right? All right, and not to mention, like I said, as we already know, child labor was a huge part of the workplace during this time period. Children were often subjected to very dangerous conditions, like fitting into small spaces, like we learned, and different stuff like that. Um, Also being paid very, very minimum wages as well. All right, next slide for me. Paul. Probably grime or something, real nasty. All right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. To make things worse, actually, you would think that maybe the okay, you would think that the government might try to help the workers out, but not only was there no regulation, but in 1799 the British Parliament actually passed a piece of legislation titled the Combination Act, which actually made it illegal for workers to unionize. So I mean, basically, workers could not even come together and try to demand better, hours or wages or conditions or whatever because it was illegal. Next slide for me, Paul. Okay. Another huge impact of the Industrial Revolution was the impact that it had upon life, and we see this in urbanization and stuff like that. And a lot of workers are quoted as having, or seen as having, a decrease in the quality of life. We see a lot of workers go from living in rural country areas to all living in, big cities and different stuff like that. Basically, following wherever there was labor, and all that good stuff. Next slide, please. All right. So the problem with these big cities that are popping up and whatnot is they were really overcrowded and they were poorly constructed and they were filthy and polluted, all types of stuff like that. They were really densely packed, so we see a lot of people living really, really closely together. Oftentimes their houses lacked, good ventilation and stuff like that. A lot of them were, shoddily built and really close together, like up on each other and stuff like that. And they lacked toilets and sewage systems. Because of this, wells, which were their drinking sources and stuff like that, were often contaminated, and that led to many outbreaks of diseases like typhoid and typhus and chlorine and different stuff like that. Tuberculosis as well. All right, next. Yeah, okay, so yeah, just to reiterate, because of the industrialization, we see a lot of serious urban overcrowding, poor sanitation, and then poor medical care as well. Some of the research I was doing was talking about the medical practices that were going on at this time, and they were really still like medieval in nature, and it was like they were still doing things like bloodletting, which was really ineffective and actually caused a lot of more deaths that were kind of unnecessary. All right, next slide for me, Paul. All right, so this is where my key concept really comes in. Is when we see the government kind of come to the rescue. All right, so governments finally began to kind of respond to the problems that were created by and then like exacerbated by the Industrial Revolution. And they did this kind of by expanding their functions in relation to the common man and different stuff like that. And so yeah, hit the next slide for me. All right, so you might ask, Jonathan, why weren't they doing this before, right? Why wasn't the government trying to have an active role in the common man's life and help him out, right? Well, the reason is laissez-faire. Did I pronounce it right? Yeah. Okay, laissez-faire. For those that are not aware, okay. This is the idea, the policy that you should let things take their course without interfering or without the government interfering in this case. And that's what the government was doing basically by having no type of regulation on this new industry and working, work hours and conditions and stuff like that. All right, next slide. All right, so they started enacting new legislation and stuff like that. One of which was the British Parliament passed the Factory Act in 1833 to regulate first excessive child labor. Some of its key provisions were that children 8 and younger couldn't work in factories, period. Children between the ages of 9 and 13 couldn't work more than 9 hours, and children between 13 and 18 couldn't work more than 12 hours. And that was kind of the first legislation that we see passed to regulate some of this industry. All right, next slide. All right, this is really important. Matter of fact, that's kind of, we learned this in human geography. All right, so this guy,
Jon Snow.
yeah, right on time. Jon Snow, not the cat from Game of Thrones. It's a different Jon Snow. He was a physician. Sure. Yeah. What'd you say? Yeah. All right. So this map is very important because basically he noted. Well, he kind of uses common sense really, and he started noticing that he could trace epidemic outbreaks of cholera to contaminated or cholera. I'm sorry. Anyway, he traced it back to this well in central London, and basically he kind of theorized that it was that this well that was contaminated. The dots represent people, and there's more dots, meaning they're more sickly people closer to this well. And he noticed that the closer they were, the more you have people that were sick or whatever. And he noticed that it was because of the well, because of poor sanitation and all that different stuff that people were getting sick, and that's why these outbreaks were, happening. And then he noticed that people that were furthest from the well, there was a less amount of people that were getting sick and stuff like that. So he started recommending doing things like boiling water before using water, and then it was his research and his investigation that started leading the way to the government improving, how they could layer their cities and how they had drinking sources put out in the sewage and all that different stuff. So he caused a lot of big change in that type of stuff. All right. And so we see the government passing regulatory laws such as the Public Health Act of 1848, which set up local health boards and investigated sanitary conditions and established a general board of health. And these boards were responsible for ensuring that water supplies were safe for the people. Next slide. Okay, so we basically started to see, like I said, less of this overcrowding and just really poor living conditions. And then we start to see better regulation and better housing and improved housing and improved layering of how cities were constructed and different things like that. And, that started to improve the life of the common man. Oh, wait a minute. Let me go back. Yeah, really, I missed an important point. Okay, so but with the government doing that, this meant that, okay, so we have sewage that was improved. We have water systems that were improved. And then we started to see more infrastructure improved, such as public lighting, public housing, public transportation, and different stuff like that. They really come into effect during this era. There's a cat at your door, Mr. Clinton, etc. Next slide for me, Mr. I'm sorry, Mr. Clinton. All right. Last slide. We see a lot of schools popping up during this time. Now, I'm not necessarily sure if it has anything to do with the fact that young kids or whatever, these young cats weren't allowed to work in the factory no more. Pardon? No. Okay, but during this time period, we see government start to mandate public education, and this was done in order to advance the goals of public order, nationalism, and economic growth. And so, we basically see a lot of schools popping up during this time period, and it became mandatory for kids to attend school as well. Yeah, have a good day.
I thought maybe you